I confess to you that I've embarked on a project. I have, and I'm not really sure when or even if I'll complete it. You see, I'm working on reshaping. I am. Some weeks ago, at the ripe old age of 62, I came to the decision that my present state of health was not all that should be, and if I want to be able to stick around and enjoy life to its fullest with my family, with my kids and my grandkids, well then I need to start getting to work at getting in a better physical shape. And of course, this is all interrelated, so the better physical shape also kind of interacts with a better emotional, mental state. So I've made some changes. I have. I stopped buying junk food. Even though I really, really, really love how it tastes, the chips and the crackers and the cookies and all of that cool stuff, I leave it in the store where it doesn't tempt me anymore. Because if it comes home, I'm going to eat it. And I've been paying more attention to what and how much I eat. And I've also been trying to get in exercise, even though this whole exercise thing is kind of like hard work at times. And it cuts into my leisure couch potato time. It does. I live across the street from the office, but now I take the scenic route. I'm going to as long as weather will permit. I walk a few blocks down and over and around and back, and take a longer route to and from the post office each day, spend more time with our exercise bike that is finally seeing some exercise. So some small progress has been made. I can tell that. I've lost a couple of pounds. Discovered when I was sprinting across one of Rex and Jan's stubble fields the other night to try and get lined up on Rex as he was coming through the dust with the sun behind him. I thought, I can run farther than I used to be able to. For a fat old guy, I thought I was doing pretty good across the stubble field. But I still have a long way to go. I know that. But I'm encouraged, even though I'm impatient, because my progress, the progress that I've made, as small as it admittedly is, it reminds me that change is possible. It is, even at my age. You really can teach an old dog new tricks. There are things in my life that should be reshaped. And not just my physical shape, as spherical as it may be. But also the shape that my spirit is in as well. And I know that I'm not alone. I'm not. The truth is that all of us, we are still works in progress. All of us are all on our life's journeys. We are. And it's a long journey. And in the process of making these long journeys, sometimes we make wrong turns, we make mistakes, we make poor choices. I could be the poster child for that, and so on. And sometimes those poor choices can have immediate and dramatic consequences. And sometimes the consequences can gradually accumulate over time. Like the extra weight that I'm carrying accumulated over time. But these things happen. Not just to our bodies, but to our spirits, our very outlook as well. We see we live in this consumer-driven society wherein so many people are focusing on what they can get for themselves. The car, the house, the gizmo, or the vacation that they want for themselves. And this carries over into so many aspects of our lives. Even in church, so many are turning to what's in it for them rather than joining together to worship God. As we speak here today, a lot of people in a lot of different churches are making decisions. Some of them are leaving their church because they don't agree with the decisions that church has made. And at that point, church for them became less intent on worshiping God than it was in getting things to go the way they wanted them to go. It's happening. Our own United Methodist denomination is facing potential splits over this. We live in a time when so many people are concerned more about looking out for number one. It's all about me, what I want. than they are about the plight of their less fortunate neighbors. The suffering of so many has become so commonplace that we really don't take note of it anymore. Things like racism and prejudice and violence have become so common that we find it easiest to just kind of turn away and pretend those things don't exist. They're not affecting me personally right now. They don't exist. I don't need to pay attention to them, but they do exist. And people are getting hurt. Let's face it, folks. We are imperfect individuals, and we live in the middle of an imperfect society. And this aspect of our human condition, it's not anything new. We see evidence of that in Scripture. In our Old Testament lesson today from Jeremiah, we hear God using this analogy of a potter reforming the clay vessels that he was making. You know, if the clay vessel wasn't turning out like he wanted it, he just reshaped it and started over again, right? Then the Lord's word came to me, Jeremiah says. House of Israel, can't I deal with you like this potter, declares the Lord? Like clay in the potter's hand, so are you in mine, house of Israel. And he says, I can change what's going on. And the house of Israel, we need to realize in this passage, it means God's people. It means us. It means you and me. And speaking through the prophet, God announces that the problems will come to God's people if they don't obey God's will for their lives. And there are consequences to improper actions. We all know that. But notice what else God says in this passage. God tells us here, as he does many places elsewhere, that he will bless those who make these changes, positive changes in their life. If they turn away from the evil that they had been doing to obey God, blessings will come. But we need to turn away from those bad habits. In our gospel lesson today, Jesus tells us that. He tells us emphatically that you need to give up this all about me mindset that so many of you have. If we really want to be who we are meant to be, we have to think of others besides ourselves. That is the reality in which we live. And the truth is, as uncomfortable as it happens to be, is that we are, all of us, flawed vessels, you and I. We're imperfect examples of what our Creator desires for us to be. And we didn't get here all at once. Over time, our society has slid deeply into this rut, if you will, of apathy, of self-centered behavior, kind of in a rut. And of course, anybody who's driven down a muddy section line road or down a snowfield road can testify to the fact that it's a whole lot easier to slide into a rut than it is to climb out of it. It's certainly a lot more work for me to lose the weight that I've gained than it was for me to gain it. But changes can be made. I know that. Habits can be changed. I know that too. I'm a recovering nicotine addict. Smoked for years and years. I had that habit, but that can be changed, as so many other things can. But we have to realize that the need for change exists. I've said this many times before. The most essential step in problem solving is to admit that there's a problem there. To own up to it. Yep, got a problem, need to change that. Our problem, yours and mine, is that our tendency to turn towards ourselves, we have slid away from being the vessels of love and grace that our God, our Creator, the Master Potter, would have us to be. We've gotten out of shape. But we don't have to stay the shape that we're in right now. Emotionally, spiritually, physically. We can change. It is possible. And God's not going to throw us away. The past mistakes that we've made that have flawed us do not keep God from loving us just as we are, as imperfect as we are, and neither will our past mistakes deter God from his efforts to reshape us into the types of fruitful servants that he would have us to be. The shape that we're in right now is not permanent. We can be reshaped. And we can do that. Takes a little work on our part. So work with our Creator. Make the changes that you can make to turn your behavior back towards the one who's created you, the one who has redeemed you, the one to whom you and your very life belong. Retrain your thought process to focus more on God, to focus more on your neighbors than you have been focusing on yourself. Because after all, each of your neighbors, every single one of them, all of your neighbors, even the ones you don't like, are children of God who have been deliberately and lovingly created in God's own image just like you. So none of your neighbors is less important than you are. None of your neighbors is more important than you are. So work on retraining your thinking about your neighbors, because when they're properly viewed, your neighbors are not impediments to your personal, self-centered search for happiness. But rather, each one of your neighbors is actually a heaven-sent opportunity for you to share the love of God that has been poured out upon you in absolutely immeasurable abundance. You have been given more of God's love than you need for yourself so that you can share with the people around you. You can share God's love. So do that, especially for the ones who are struggling, the ones who are having a hard time in their lives, they're going through a difficult patch, the ones who are struggling to fit into society's sense of what's normal and what's not, what's acceptable and what's not, the ones who are so beaten down by their life experiences that they erroneously think that nobody can possibly love the likes of me, but they're wrong because you can love them, because God built you that way. Love them as they are, wherever they are, however they are. Let them know that they do have worth. Let them know that they are loved. Think of others besides yourself. Instead of fussing over what your church isn't doing to cater to your will, focus on what you can do for your church, what you can do for God, inside and outside of these walls. And you can do that because God has given you talents and abilities to help your church to prosper in its mission and its outreach. So use those talents. Joyously and persistently claim God as your Savior. Do all that you can do to help God to reshape you into a vessel of his love that can be used to pour that love out on the world around us. Praise be to God for his limitless grace, for his almighty power that can reshape us into the servants that we are meant to be. Amen.